And just begin by the couple of pieces of um, information we start all these connecting sessions with. We're a small enough group. I'm not particularly worried about your muting yourselves, but if you hear background noise and it's you, please mute yourself. Yada, yada. I would remind you that as we do at the annual meeting, we try to ask people to introduce themselves by name and church when you speak in the group. And finally, just a reminder that, as you just saw, we are recording this. This will get posted on the conference YouTube channel. So we don't want to stifle the conversation any, but we want you to be a little thoughtful about what things you say while we're recording. Like, this is probably not the place to reveal your phone number. Wait until we're done recording before you say things like that and stuff. Other than that, this is about conversation with Bekah, and you all seem to be dive into that pretty well. So I am going to be quiet and let our conversations continue. I think I saw that Zeph wanted to bring us in our next conversation direct.
I just sort of had not housekeeping, I don't know. I have been confused as to where to find the talk that Bekah did and the transcript. Is that available on the conference website? Oh, this is not. Sorry. I'm not.
Let me look for that for you, and I will let you know where to find it as we go through.
Okay, thank you.
So the annual meeting page has a section for documents for the annual meetings, like where the worship bulletin and the agenda are. The transcript is there, I believe. I saw it there when I was downloading other documents. And I think you can get to that from the conference website. I got a link from Thaddeus, so.
I just got my evaluation form from Thaddeus today, and I believe the link is in that email, but I didn't try it yet.
The annual meeting 2023 thing is it just says who you are, Bekah, and like where to register. So
do you see a tab on the top there that might say something like documents or virtual folder, maybe it says?
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
No
Sorry.
And I just put the direct link in the chat for you, Zeph.
Oh.
Okay, now that we got the housekeeping part done, you guys are supposed to be asking the deep questions.
What you got, folks?
So I have a rather pragmatic question to ask you, Bekah. I'm an occupational therapist and also assistive technology professional, and awesome. You kind of blew me away with your device. So can you describe that to me? I've not seen anything like that before.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can hopefully hold it up in camera here. This is what's called the most official name for it is a Braille Sense 6. The category of device is it is a Braille note taker, and it is basically a Braille tablet. So I have a Braille keyboard up on the top here. And then this is a refreshable Braille display. So I'm not sure it's going to be visible. I'm also not sure I've got it in a mode where it's not going to do that very well. There, you can do that. I don't know if it's going to be visible on Zoom, but the pins lift up and down to make different Braille characters. And so I wrote my speech on there, and I read it off there while I was presenting it.
Nice, thank you. That's amazing. That's just one of the amazing things that was about listening to you and watching you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And technology is, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. This is just worlds better than the Braille technology I was using as a kid, and I am not sure I would have made it through college and grad school without a device like this, or at least not with as much of my brain power intact, because so much of it would have been used just trying to read and write my assignments.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is Judy Lang Nelson Congregational. I am struck by how communication is important, and how when you don't have all the senses, the other senses take over and become a wonderful gift and magnified more. And I guess what I want to do is share with you that I'm working with a young woman from Afghanistan and her family. And this young woman was literate in her own language, which is one of the least spoken of the languages. And she is attempting to learn English now, and it's been 2 years, and she's got the alphabet almost down, and so it's been a long struggle. And I've been working with her through an interpreter. Most of us have, and I've gotten to the point where I can pick up cues and understand her, even though the words aren't there. Mm-hmm. And it's really been a journey, and I think about what's not available to her because of that limitation, and it's tough. And I just honor you for how you've helped other people with your wonderful work, and still struggled with what you've had, I'm sure. And thank you. I just look forward to more wise words so that I can soak them up and understand and carry on and do good things.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And yeah, like, I mean, language barriers are in many respects an access issue, right? I mean, this is so much of what we see in the deaf community as well, is that for a lot of folks who are deaf, often in that community rendered with a capital D, they view their use of ASL as one of their primary features as a community, and see the problem that they face as some of it being society not discriminating against them and not accepting them in a variety of ways, but also it's just they don't have access to language in the same ways. People do not, most hearing people do not know ASL, and so the burden gets put on deaf individuals to figure out how to communicate with hearing folks, and that's the same thing that happens when people speaking different languages come into any country that doesn't speak the same language as them. Is the burden gets put on them to spend 2 years learning to speak this language while you're trying to get settled and adapt in a variety of other ways. It's really hard, and I don't know what all the answers for some of these things are, because I'm not sure it's practical for all of us to learn every single possible language. But I definitely think about what are the ways that we can support people in communicating in the ways that are most natural and comfortable for them, and not trying to force them into communicating in a way that works best for us. So I think what you're describing of, like, you've gotten to know her, and you can you may not speak her language, and she's still not comfortable in yours, but you you read each other's tones and body language in a way that is only possible because you have a relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
Deborah?
I am curious when we talk about accessibility. I'm Debbie from the Ringe UCC Church, but I'm also the Disability Rights Center of New Hampshire Community Outreach Specialist.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, do you have an accessible voting machine that allows you to vote in private, that comes up in Braille, and allows you to vote?
Yeah, that is such a great question. So I've actually just moved. The election cycle coming up is going to be my first election cycle in my new home. But the last time I voted in person, no. I showed up at my and some of that, you know, I often find I have more energy for advocating for other people and less energy for advocating for myself. Which is a misnomer, right? Because advocacy, especially when it comes to things like voting machines, if I ask my polling place or my election officials if they have accessible voting machines, that's advocacy not just for me, but for any other visually impaired person who might be voting there. And yet sometimes my brain is like, this is so much work. I have so many other things I'm doing. So I showed up at my election place, you know, like prepared to you know, say like, you know, we need to find a way to do this. And the way that they had to do that was to have my roommate who was with me help me. And I was like, this is not proper election procedure, but you know, for today, we're gonna roll with it. In my new location, I've looked into it, and we have an electronic voting online system. So if you are a person with a disability who cannot either get to your election place and or fill out a mail ballot independently, they will give you access to this online voting system. So I've just received my access to that. So I'm interested to see how that works. But I definitely have questions for my election officials as well of, you know, if I had wanted to go in person, would you have, do you have the accessible voting machines to make that possible? And also, how secure is this online system? How is there chances that you know, my vote will be counted differently than someone who submitted a ballot in person? So yeah, that is such a great question.
Well, I'm just curious, what state are you in?
Massachusetts.
Because I talk to Massachusetts a lot, and from my understanding, the Disability Rights Center in Massachusetts believes that it's secure because we are copying their law for a portal.
Nice. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'm very excited about it because I find for me personally, doing things online is often a more accessible way to get stuff done, assuming that web accessibility has actually been ensured. And so I really hope that system works well, because if so, that seems pretty ideal for me.
Tom Taylor from Third Church in Elstead. You have opened my eyes. I did not realize, and like I told you at the conference, my daughter is totally handicapped, got caught in a tornado and wheelchair and can't talk and stuff like that. But the hurdles that you have to go through, and here I am living with it, and I don't realize all the stuff just so you can be like me. That's all, you know, that's essentially my comment on the whole thing, what you've educated me immensely in this week.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you know, folks with disabilities go through that does not is not often perceived. And you know, I imagine that you have identified, you know, a lot of that from your experience with your daughter. But yeah, I think sometimes when if we're dealing with it alone, it can often just seem like, you know, well, this is just like what's happening. This is just my life. This is not, you know, a larger pattern of something. But you know, then when you start connecting with other people who are experiencing similar things, you realize, you know, like, oh no, this isn't just like my life and I have to accept it the way it is. These are patterns of society that don't have to be the way that they are. So I hope that there are some things that you realize that don't have to be the way that they are, and that you can imagine ways that they could be different. I'm curious, and you know, if folks have other questions, you're more than welcome to ask. But you know, I've heard, you know, so many of you say like that you know, this talk meant so much to you. I'm wondering if any of you have specific ways that you're imagining incorporating what I talked about into your lives, or specific action steps that you're thinking about taking. That was in my original conception of the speech. I wanted to end it with a call to action to consider what ways we could each begin turning the tables in our own lives and in our own communities. And then I looked at the time and we were running out of it. And I feel very sad that I didn't get to say that, because I do think that that's very important to think not just about, you know, that this needs to happen, but you know, to start to imagine how that's going to happen. And I was really excited, Gordon, to hear about the event in February, because I think that's where you can start doing a lot of that, thinking about how do we create new tables. And Debbie, if I'm not mistaken, that was the one of the things that you pointed out to me when we talked after my speech, was we need to talk about the how. So I'm wondering if any of you have ideas on the how here. And it's okay if you don't, because I know that that's a sudden question, but I would love to hear it if you do.
If there are a few enough of us, just jump in.
Okay, thank you. I know I personally am going to start by asking my school what contingency plans or whatever, like setting up the processes for supporting disabled people before, so you don't have to, right? Like, so people with disabilities don't have to be the ones that, you know, you don't have to be the Jewish person teaching the school what Yom Kippur is, right? Like, yeah, and I haven't gotten around to do that, but our school building is kind of terrible for that, so I'm yeah, that's where I'm starting. And also giving people a lot more grace in how they are, and just letting people be, because yeah, I see a lot of people just being like really cruel to people for them being quote unquote weird or like different or whatever, and often that stems back to a disability of some kind or something like that. And I just actively thinking about giving people more grace, and even if they don't, it's just like a good thing to do. sorry, rambling, but you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much, Zeph, and I think you know, and I am sure you are that, you know, from having talked to you and knowing how you think, I imagine how you're thinking of this already. But you know, one thing to keep in mind when you're advocating at your school is if you have friends with disabilities that you can or classmates that you can talk to and be in conversation with as you're doing this work, it's always really tough to find the balance between not making marginalized people do all the labor and making sure that they are in the conversation so that the work you're doing is actually helpful to them and not, you know, going against
Yeah.
other things that you may not have thought of. So, you know, I find that the best way to do that is to just be in community and you know, try to take on the role that others find helpful for you. So I'm very excited about that work for you, and yeah, absolutely giving people grace. I think that is so important to remember that we don't know everything that's going on with one another. And you know, what we find weird or off-putting may still be something that is really valuable or just how this person goes through the world.
Seth, you mentioned how awful buildings can be. Another starting point may be that I believe we only have one church building in the New Hampshire Conference with an accessible to all designation.
That is correct.
So it's a place where it can be done too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so I've been on the UCC Disabilities Ministries Board for, oh goodness, 5 years now. So if any of y'all are looking for resources on how to improve church accessibility, the UCCDM website has an audit and checklist that is really helpful, and you can go through the process, and the Accessible to All committee will support you in figuring out how to go through that process. And you know, one thing that I always tell churches when they're considering these things is like, yes, a lot of really important accessibility things do cost a lot of money. You know, you can't really be fully accessible if somebody using a wheelchair or with mobility aids can't get into your building. And yet, there are always things that you can do to improve accessibility that will not cost a lot of money. You know, there are ways of structuring your programming, of offering more options for ways for people to engage with your programming, of incorporating multi-sensory experiences into worship. There are so many things that can be done to improve accessibility. And if you don't currently have the money to build the wheelchair ramp, that doesn't mean that you can't think about accessibility. But also still please raise the money to build a wheelchair ramp. That'd also be great.
I take it from the way you were saying that, Bekah, that it's kind of the message of don't let the desire for perfection stop you from doing something.
Yes.
But still keep working at it.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, I think a lot of the time people get this idea that accessibility is just always going to be expensive and always going to be really, really hard, and you know, people just kind of throw their hands up and go like, well, then we're just not going to try. And that's really sad because, you know, yes, it can be expensive and yes, it can be hard, but that it's still really important, and not everything is expensive and hard. So, you know, start with the things that are easier for you, and build from there. And the other thing that I remind people of is that while the UCCDM has an A2A designation that we give to churches, you're never actually done on the journey of accessibility. Everyone, every organization, every individual will have ways that they fall short in providing access, because we just do not have a comprehensive list of all things that bodies and minds need, because bodies and minds need different things. And I really try to frame that for people as, instead of being another thing to be scared of, it's an opportunity. We are always able to learn and grow in this area. And so accessibility gives you a chance to learn new things and try new things, and innovate. And I hope that that's really exciting to people rather than being frightening.
The fact that it is hard seems to be an excuse we use to cop out from lots of types of inclusion.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's, and that goes back to things that I was saying in my address as well. It's like, yes, the work of inclusion and the work of justice is hard. And also it brings so much reward. And, we need to acknowledge that it's hard, and we have hesitations. And then we need to set our minds on why we want to do it anyway and do it.
Linda, I see you're trying to.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to pare down all the things that I want to ask or talk about. So I am sometimes asked what churches could do to make themselves more accessible because of my background, and my simplest recommendation is for people who are visually impaired, print the order of worship on yellow or at least off-white paper that doesn't have a glare in a sans serif font, and that costs nothing.
Yeah,
because you still just buy paper, just buy it not white, and just change the font. If you're using a font has the little fancy things on it, it's harder to read, and just change that. And I think that is helpful to what you were speaking about, in that that's not a scary change.
Is Times New Roman a readable font?
I'm sorry?
Is Times New Roman a readable font? No.
I think that has a serif, doesn't it? Or is it sans? I think that's serif.
Sorry, I don't know what a serif is.
So the little like the end will have a little cute, like a little line on the bottom of it. Like just the letter, nothing fancy about it. It's much easier on your eyes to read. And for people who don't have visual impairments, it's much easier to read a sans serif font anyway. But that takes a step towards the mindset change, that there are little things that we can do step by step, and just keep it rolling, because you're absolutely right. Some of the changes are not big and expensive, and yet they can make an impact.
But there's also, before you go on, the little things, some of the big expensive things, like a ramp that could be very expensive, there are grants available for for everybody really, if you look for them. And so that's a high energy thing that maybe a committee could work on. Who can I ask to get the materials, or after I get the materials, can I form a group of carpenters or people who know how to build the ramp? And all of those things, I don't think a church is knowledgeable enough, because you do not know what you do not know.
Yes.
And there are people in community like me, I know what accessible looks like. And Saturday was not accessible, by the way. It's a totally different feel. How would you know that, everybody puts the handicap seat in the front pew for wheelchair users? Most people don't want to sit in the front. So thinking that through, I think, is the hardest part. of what you have to do because you still don't know what you don't know.
And I like your comment about ramps don't have to be paid for by other, that there's grants available. I'm sorry, this is Linda Landon from Amherst Church. I'm sorry, I didn't say that earlier. And one of my things too is I try to convince churches that a beautiful church is one that has the ramp in the front.
Yes.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Instead of like, why do people with mobility issues have to enter through the back door?
Absolutely.
So there's that. The other thing is, so I currently work in public schools, and one thing that has changed since I was a kid, which was a long time ago, is the kids who have disabilities are right in the classroom with their neurotypical and non-disabled peers, which is a wonderful upbringing to be right alongside people who have disabilities and experience them. And they're very warm to each other all around. So it's a great experience. And then maybe these kids are growing up not having to learn it as an adult, like I kind of did. So I think that's one thing that has changed and is a good change. The other thing is, Bekah, and you kind of did this a bit already, and I think Deborah, you've helped with this too, is like, what else can we do? I don't want to sit silent and sit on my hands and say, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, totally. So many good things there, and thank you, Deborah, also for all of your contributions there. One thing I'll add about church architecture, this is a bit of a soapbox for me. In addition to the don't put the ramp in the back of the church, think about accessibility of chancel areas. If your pulpit cannot be reached by someone using a wheelchair or other mobility device, that says something about who you expect to have in your pulpit. So that's one thing that anytime a church is thinking about investing some money into an accessibility redesign, yes, first definitely make sure that people can get in the door, but once they're in the door, we need to not just assume that they're gonna sit wherever we want them to sit and attend the programs we imagine them attending. We need to be thinking about full access, and that includes access to leadership. So that's one thing that I think about a lot. But yeah, I think in terms of other, what can we do? I think Debbie, your point about people don't know what we don't know is it's the same thing that I said to Zeph. People with disabilities need to be in the conversation. So like I said, the UCCDM has tools for doing an accessibility audit of your church, but you need disabled people to be part of that process, because they're going to notice things that non-disabled people aren't going to notice. And you probably need people with a variety of disabilities to be part of that process, because we're not going to notice, like I am not necessarily going to notice the things that a wheelchair user is going to need. I'm a little more aware of them because this is my field, but also we are all limited by the experience that we have of the world. So that's definitely things that I think about a lot. And then, I think a lot about where are the areas of advocacy, some of the points of pain that I talked about that we could be advocating for on state and national levels. So things like healthcare reform, we need healthcare systems in this country that make sure that people have the healthcare that they need and aren't falling victim to insurance companies that are going to deny them the care that they need. And that healthcare needs to be affordable. I made brief mention of the supplemental security income system, and the longer story on that is that at this time, people with disabilities who are on SSI, receiving government benefits, are only able to have $2,000 in assets. So everything that they own cannot exceed more than $2,000, or they will lose the small amount of income that SSI gives them and
It was
access to Medicaid.
$3,000. That's even worse. Oh my God.
$3,000 if you're married, which also, by the way, means that marriage equality does not exist for people with disabilities, because for a lot of people with disabilities on SSI, if they get married, they will most certainly lose their benefits. So
Okay.
these programs effectively keep people in poverty, because for a lot of folks, even many of them could get jobs, but the amount of money that they would need to earn in order to make it possible to survive and while losing their benefits is a huge leap to make. And also, Medicaid provides personal attendant services, which most health insurances do not. So for people who need personal attendant services, they have to stay on Medicaid. The only other way to get that would be to pay for that themselves or get a very expensive insurance that pays for that. And that's yet another just really high hurdle to be able to reach. So we need comprehensive Social Security reform. We need to have systems that support disabled folks and don't force us to live in poverty. So political activism on issues like that is something that would be very helpful to the disabled community.
I would like to add that you can get politically active in New Hampshire. Very easy. There are some very important issues coming up. And if you intersect with the disability community, like we have language for that election portal that's being reviewed on the 31st of October. And it's wonderful if we could uplift other voices besides the disability community, because unfortunately that people tend to pat us on the head. And as annoying as that is, these issues are not disability issues on their own. Think about what an election portal means to somebody who has transportation issues trying to get to a poll. You know, all those things, and there are several, and I won't take up Bekah's time. But I also want to say accessibility. That's a big, huge issue. As I sat on Saturday, the conference did all the right things, but you really didn't reach the point of where it was accessible. You know, take the cart screen. I knew you had tables in front of it, so there was heads in front of the cart screen, and I'm hard of hearing. So sometimes I need that cart screen. But the musician had his guitar standing, resting on it for a while. And I don't believe there was intent, but it's a struggle. I think there are people, including myself, who can come and help you look at your venue and say, well, this is what we really need to ask the Grapponi Center to do. This is how we should set up the table so a user who uses a wheelchair can choose where they can sit. You know, all those questions. And I got to tell you, it's not the first time the Grapponi Center has done that. You know, so, but we as a society can communicate that and advocate for that, as long as you do it with somebody with a disability and not for them and taking away their voice in that matter.
Absolutely. Thank you for all of that, Debbie. But yeah, like accessibility consultants for event planning. I mean, for so many things, but event planning in particular are so helpful. And it really does feel different being in an accessible space. And it's hard to fully describe what that is. That, you know, when you are experiencing barriers just about everywhere you go, and then to find a space where there just are so many fewer of them, it's a really freeing experience. And I think this dovetails to your other point about advocacy, Debbie, is that one thing that we often say in the disability community is that accessibility is good for everyone. That even if something is not a disability related need, it can still be something that is actively helpful in your life. So like the that voting portal, there are ways in which that will be helpful to a variety of people who might have difficulty getting to their election place on election day. A classic example is curb cuts. Those are made for folks using wheelchairs and other mobility devices. And they're also really great for parents with strollers. And so just there are so many ways in which creating a world with fewer barriers, folks who are not disabled may find that removes barriers they didn't even consciously realize were there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, back when we were discussing the ramps and stuff, there was one church that was gonna get a ramp. And of course, some churches don't like using the ADA rules for slope. And we actually grabbed the wheelchair because we didn't have anybody at that point that we could use to help us. So we grabbed a wheelchair from the town and went checking out ramps at different churches. And one was, a steep one. And we're going, I wouldn't want to go down this or up it or push somebody up it. But what I wanted to say about ramps, more generally, because I know what one church in New Hampshire, and it's not a UCC church, did many years ago. And to get the slope that you need for a ramp, and it was up at least a floor or so. So it's, you got to talk a long, twisty ramp for people who cannot walk far. Not even dealing with wheelchairs, but people who cannot walk far. Sometimes when we put the ramps in, everybody's got to go a little farther than I feel like we're sending people who are handicapped to go farther than most of us would go if we were just going down the stairs. And so to find ways to make it accessible to all, not just looking at the wheelchair, but all, that we're not extending how far people have to walk or get into things and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, no, and again, that's you need to consult a variety of people
right
on those things. Yeah, because
you're absolutely right.
What works for one body may not work well for another, and so where do you find a good balance? What creative solutions can we come up with to meet everybody's needs? Obviously, this is not always applicable, especially for old buildings that are at the level they are. But why do we need so many stairs to get into a place in the first place? If it was just if the door was on ground level, you wouldn't need a ramp, long or short. Everyone would just be able to come in.
I do have to say that architects have come up with an answer for that, Linda. What I'm going to say is this is where people get creative.
Yeah.
Right. And I saw an exceptionally long ramp. They had benches that a person who has mobility dishes that they could rest on.
Yeah.
To get into the building. And that's not the perfect solution, but at least it was an option.
Totally.
By the way, I'm Linda Ratcliffe and I'm from Chester Congregational Baptist Church. So sorry, I forgot to say that.
No worries.
Friends, we have about 5 minutes left together. Just want to see if there's any other directions you want to take our conversation. Don't be shy about it. Just take us there.
I've been thinking, this is Judy Lang from Nelson Congregational, that one of the things that I think we, each and every one of us can do is, if we're in a place where our brother or sister are there and they're not, say they're blind, say they're in a wheelchair, say they can't talk, but helping the people to speak to them directly and not speak to the advocate as if the person in the wheelchair or the deaf person or whatever person that has a challenge, that they're not there. It breaks my heart when I see that happening, and I notice that I'll turn my head and look directly at the person that is being talked over, or I will move myself to a side so that the conversation becomes with the person that it should be, and that's such a simple action, and I really hope just that simple action makes a difference.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for bringing that up and for doing that. This is definitely one of the ways that ableism very strongly shows up in my life. That if I am with somebody, and I've noticed it particularly in the airport for some reason. I'm not sure what it is about TSA agents, but they will very frequently look at me, look at the person next to me, and go, "Can she see okay?" Which is just fascinating to me, because you've identified what's going on here, and something in your brain has gone, blind person, I can't talk to them. And I don't understand what it is in people's brains that does that. But yeah, it's incredibly painful, and something that I have lots of conversations with my friends and allies about how to approach it. And so, I, as is so always true, I recommend talking to the people in question about what if you have the chance to, about what they would like you to do in situations like that. But oftentimes something like I don't know, why don't you ask them? Or like redirecting the I find I'm not usually a huge fan of shame as a teaching tool, but I find just a little bit of creating just a little bit of discomfort in those scenarios of you just ignored someone and talked about them as if they aren't there. Let's just create a little space for awkwardness for you to recognize that that's not okay. And so I love your moving towards people, and showing that you are listening and know that they are part of the conversation.
Yep, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
This is Linda Landon from Amherst again. I have a question to the group. Would anyone in the group, Bekah included, even though I know that you're not a New Hampshire resident, be interested in putting together something for Prepared to Serve. And I don't have a disability, so I recognize that I am, not the best representative.
I would be interested in doing that. And I do have counterparts, not necessarily a UCC, that could help with that.
Right.
Because I think a further discussion of ableism and how to have the right questions to ask really comes from the disability community.
Yep.
And it would be a great
And
conversation.
it would be.
Because I really believe in the with and not the for and just about anything. And this is, I think, a topic that a person who experiences a disability should lead, or a family
Yes,
member.
I agree. 100% agree.
Should lead, but it should be a topic of Prepare to Serve.
Yeah. I'm also thinking about accessibility as well.
Yeah.
Making churches more accessible.
Yeah, that is a wonderful topic. But it's also a very difficult structural conversation. It could be simple as my church has a second floor and they do have a lift, but it fits a standard wheelchair, and most wheelchairs are no longer that standard hospital wheelchair. So when we do have a particular person comes to church, I always say, he could watch it over the TV, but why don't we have church downstairs? Everybody have church downstairs.
Right.
There's simple solutions.
Right.
Yeah. So I think I'm hearing a few thoughts in what you're saying, Linda. I'm hearing, a portion of the programming for the event in February, and I'm also maybe hearing a larger team that could work going forward to support churches in accessibility. And there is also another program from the UCC Disabilities Ministries that you could form a conference accessibility team. And that would be a team that would serve as a resource both to local churches and to the conference. So that could be a team that advises the conference on accessibility for events and for other aspects of their programming, as well as resourcing local churches in improving their accessibility, or making those shifts, like Debbie said, to just do things differently, and could also put on other programming to raise more awareness about disability and ableism. So I'm available as a resource to help consult about those things. But yeah, I think for either or both of those projects, getting lots of input and membership from folks who are disabled within or outside of the UCC would be really important. So yeah, go forth and do great things. I'm happy to be part of further conversations.
Thank you.
So friends, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Bekah, thank you for inspiring, challenging, touching our hearts on Saturday, and then continuing those conversations today. And just remind you all that we have one more connecting session Thursday night at 7. It's another chance to be in conversation with Sarah and I. Again, thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, especially to Bekah.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, all.
Thank you.